Many sole proprietors wonder how and when they have to pay tax and if they need to pay advance tax during the year. Today's episode is dedicated to this topic. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Business Lessons in Denmark podcast. Our podcast gives the answers to your business-related questions that have not been answered yet or things that haven't even crossed your mind. My name is Edina Bohos and I am here with my colleague Katalin Balog. We are owners of Kulekan CPS Danish accounting office. Hi Kati, this is the fourth episode where we talk about Danish taxes, and I was just thinking that to understand the Danish tax system, one should know that this is a so-called welfare state. In fact, all Scandinavian countries are welfare states, so not only Denmark, but also Norway and Sweden. And we can extend it to all of the Nordic countries, which also includes Iceland and Finland. That's true. Welfare state means that the state takes over certain tasks from the private sector and makes it available for all the people living in the country. It includes free education, free higher education, scholarships for students, free healthcare, care for the elderly, pensions. Even if a person gets sick, they are not left without income. So in general, there is a relatively good social safety net. Yes, and in countries with a different system, one often has to pay for these things, either directly or by having an insurance that covers these expenses. In other words, you have to take care of yourself. It's, of course, easy to get used to getting things for free in Denmark, but the other side of the coin is that the level of taxes reflect that many things are at a discounted price or free. Well, yes. The only free cheese is in the mousetrap. Yeah. So if you look at this welfare states that you also mentioned, taxes are relatively high in all of them. Of course, there are exceptions. For example, Norway can maintain a high quality welfare state without high taxes, but they have oil. In the 60s, enormous oil fields were discovered in the bottom of the North Sea. And since then, Norway has had huge income from oil exports. And in fact, it has become one of the richest countries in the world. So it is not difficult to maintain a welfare state because there is something to pay for it with. Actually, Denmark also has quite a lot of income from the North Sea oil and also gas, but far from as much as Norway. And so one turns to the taxes as an income source. Well, yes, that's how it is. And as the majority of the Danish population, the Danish voters, seem to prefer the welfare state, so it is not expected to change fundamentally in the near future. I understand. Well, let's look at these taxes a little bit closer then. In our last episode, we talked about what kind of tax and how much I have to pay from my income as a sole proprietor. But how do I pay my tax in practice? The tax payment itself works in the following way. You pay advance tax during the year, and then when the year is over, you make your tax return, and then it becomes clear whether you have paid enough advance tax or not. If you paid too little, you have to pay some more tax, and if you pay too much, you will get the money back. Okay, paying advance tax is quite simple when one is an employee because the employer deducts the advance tax from one's salary, so one doesn't even receive the full salary, but this is not the case as a business owner. When I send my bills to my customers, they pay me the full amount, so they don't withhold tax from my income. then they even pay months on the invoice, which I have to pay to the state, as we have already discussed.
Yeah, that's right. That's why you have to make sure that every month you pay advance tax yourself. The advance tax that one pays oneself is called B-scat, B tax, and what is deducted from the employee's salaries is called A-scat, that is A tax.
Okay, so this A and B are just different names depending on where the advance tax is coming from. If the advance tax was deducted from the salary, then it's called A-scat, and if the person paid it herself or himself, then it's B-scat.
Yes, they had to be distinguished somehow. They could have received some other names like tax number 1 and tax number 2, or apples and pears.
Or Laurel and Hardy. Maybe.
Well, the tax agency had a bit more conservative attitude about choosing the names, and so they chose A-scat and B-scat.
Yeah, it's probably better this way. And as a sole proprietor, how much is the advance tax that is the B-scat that I would need to pay? Is it voluntary, or how much I pay, or how does it work?
You have to set your preliminary tax assessment at the beginning of the year, or even better, at the end of the previous year. In your preliminary tax assessment, you will write how much profit you expect for the year. The tax agency always puts up the preliminary tax assessments in the system towards the middle of November. It is called forskuddsoppgørelse in Danish. If you have provided your email address to the tax agency, you will always receive an email about saying, well, we have just put up your preliminary tax assessment for the next year in the system. Take a look and register how much income you expect next year and what your deductions will be.
So I guess I will have to log into my tax page on the digital interface of the tax agency and register my expected yearly profit in the next year. For example, 420,000 crowns.
Yeah, exactly. And when you have done that, the system calculates how much advance tax you will have to pay for that profit. I said earlier that a sole proprietor has to pay advance tax every month. Actually, not exactly, because you do not need to pay in June and in December. Therefore, you only have to pay B-scat in 10 months. So when the system calculates that for 420,000 crowns, you will need to pay, let's say, 142,450 crowns in tax, then this is simply divided into 10 parts, and you are charged 14,245 Danish crowns in B-scat monthly.
And how do I know where to pay?
It will be on your tax page, which you have already mentioned. The dates, the amounts, and the account numbers will be neatly displayed there, and you will have to administer all of it yourself. Usually you have to pay the B-scat on the 20th of the month, but sometimes it falls on a weekend, so maybe then you have to pay on the 21st or the 22nd. So anyway, you just log in to your tax page, check where you have to transfer and how much, and then you just transfer the money. Or you can set it so that your bank always transfers it automatically. And then you don't even have to spend time with the transfer, and you don't forget it.
Okay, but as a sole proprietor, it may not be so easy to know in advance how much the profit will be. Especially in the case of a new business, how can I know in advance that I will earn 500,000 crowns or only 100,000 crowns or maybe zero? All of these possibilities can happen.
Yeah, that's true. it's not easy to estimate in advance, but somehow you will have to try as accurately as possible. Fortunately, you can change the setting during the year. So as time goes by and you see more and more how much incomes you actually earn, you can reset your preliminary tax assessment, and then the system recalculates your BSCAT accordingly.
Okay, so it's best to constantly monitor if I set my preliminary tax assessment correctly. Does everything go as I expected, or do I get more income than expected, or maybe less?
Yes, exactly. The system is designed in such a way that if you pay enough advance tax during the year, that is cheapest. This is the cheapest for you because you can do it interest-free. So if you pay enough tax in advance by the 31st of December, it won't cost you extra money. But if you pay less advance tax than you should, and so you get back taxes, then you will have to pay interest on that.
Oh, well, that doesn't sound so good. And how much is that interest?
If we are talking about the tax for 2023, it's 5.5%. As a sole proprietor, you will have to submit your tax return by the 1st of July, 2024, and the back taxes must be paid by then. Of course, it is possible to do it earlier than that, but the tax agency only puts up the tax returns to the system in the middle of March, so you cannot do it before March, even if you want to. So the interest will be calculated from the 1st of January 2024 until you pay your back taxes.
So if my actual income was 420,000 crowns, but I only registered 300,000 crowns in my preliminary tax assessment, and so I paid BSCAT based on that during the year, then I will have to pay back taxes on this 120,000 crowns. Let's say I wait until the 1st of July to make the payment. How much interest will I pay then?
Well, you will pay about 1,500 crowns as interest, depending on your individual circumstances. I think you could have spent this money on something more interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, two people could have a very nice dinner at a very good restaurant for this amount.
Yeah, sure. Shall we write up a list of Michelin star restaurants in Copenhagen for you?
Oh, no, thank you. I think I could figure out where to go even without a list.
Okay.
I see the point. It's best to pay enough advance tax during the year because this way I can save money.
Yeah, that's right. Also, do not forget to set your preliminary tax assessment at the beginning of the year, or even better, at the end of the previous year, and always pay your BSCAT on the 20th of the month, except in June and December. If you do these things, then you are well on the way to success.
I understand. Actually, the system seems quite simple now. It's not complicated at all.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that you think so. It actually has a logic. You just have to understand and act accordingly. The system is set up in such a way that it is cheapest for you to follow the rules and the logic of the system. If you don't, you will be punished, so to speak, and it becomes more expensive for you.
Okay, then it's like driving too fast. If you respect the speed limit, you don't have to pay. But if you go faster than that, you will get a fine.
Yeah.
And what will be the menu in our next episode now that we are talking about restaurants?
In the next episode, we will stay with the topic of taxes. Today, we discussed how the advance tax works for a sole proprietor. I think it would be logical to also discuss how the tax return works, that the year is over.
I think the timing is quite good as the tax return period is approaching.
Exactly.
Thanks, Kat, for a lot of useful information, and thank you for staying with us. Our next episode is coming out next Monday. Today's episode was sponsored by Coolacan CPS. Coolacan CPS can help with starting your company with bookkeeping and tax matters. In addition, we also provide business and financial consulting. If you liked the show, then follow us and like our Facebook page. If you would like to contact us, you can do so via our website www.accounts.cool. We wish you a successful week.